All right, so let's do all these problems here. Here we go. All right, number one is, all right, 9x to the fourth power plus 27x to the third minus 4x squared minus 12x is equal to 0. All right, we're going to group because there's 4 terms. Usually when there's 4 terms, you're probably going to group. All right, find the GCF of this, which is 9x to the third power. And when you factor that out, it will be, sorry, 9x, yeah, 9x to the third power, so it'll be x plus 3. And then you can factor out the 4 here, it'll be minus 4. But remember, minus 4x. But remember that it's x plus 3. This sign changes because you're factoring out a negative 4 here. When you have the same terms inside the parentheses, you could combine the outside terms. There'll be 9x cubed minus 4x, and then x plus 3. All right. The problem with this one, though, is a little bit trickier because you could also factor a little bit more on this one. So you could factor and factor again. So it's going to be x, and then it'll be 9x squared minus 4, and x plus 3. And then if you factor and factor, and then you can factor again, technically, because this is a difference of squares. So you have to recognize if it's factorable or not. So if it's factorable, you factor as much as you can. So this is x, and then 3x minus 2, 3x plus 2, and then x plus 3 here. So the x plus 3 comes down, the x comes down, and this, you're factoring this and this. So now that you've factored everything, you can't simplify anymore. You make each of these terms equal to 0. So x is equal to 0, 3x minus 2 is equal to 0, 3x plus 2 is equal to 0, and x plus 3 is equal to 0. You make them all equal to 0. So our 4 solutions are 0. You add the 2, divide by 3, it'll be 2 over 3, negative 2 over 3, and x equals negative 3. Those are our 4 solutions to this problem. Okay? All right. Number 2 is the substitution method here that we've used. You use the substitution method when you have, so you have x to the 4th minus 5x squared plus 6 is equal to 0. You use the substitution method when this power, the highest power, is 2 times as much as the next highest power. Okay, so you're going to use u. You can use any variable. You could use u here. U is equal to x squared. The reason why we do this is so that we can make it quadratic. So it'll be x squared, right? X squared is x to the 4th, minus 5, and then x squared plus 6 is equal to 0. I'm going to replace the x squares with the u, so it'll be u squared minus 5u plus 6 is equal to 0. All right. So when you do that, right, factor it out. So again, I made this a quadratic, and once I make it a quadratic, I could use the factoring method or the quadratic formula to solve this. So this is what? 6 and negative 5. A lot of people put negative 6 and positive 1, right? And that's wrong because negative 6 times 1 is negative 6. So it should be negative 6. Sorry, this should be negative 3 and negative 2, right? Because negative 3 times negative 2 is positive 6. Negative 3 plus negative 2 is negative 5. So this will be u minus 3 and then u minus 2. But keep in mind, we're not trying to solve for u, we're trying to solve for x, right? So we go x, we replace the u with the x squared. We go back to it. Okay? And these are not factorable. These you can't, they're not the difference of squares here. 3 is not a square, 2 is not a square. So we just make it equal to 0. X squared minus 3 is equal to 0, and x squared minus 2 is equal to 0. Add the 2 to both, add the 3 to both sides. x squared is equal to 3. You get the square root of both sides. When you get the square root, you get the plus or minus radical 3. A lot of you guys did the I here, but that's not correct. You add the 2 here. So x squared is equal to 2. Get the square root of both sides here. X squared, sorry, x, my bad, is equal to plus or minus radical 2. So your 4 answers are radical 2, negative radical 2, radical 3, and negative radical 3. Okay. Number 3 here, this is the toughest one. All right. Radical 2x plus 3 plus radical x minus 2 is equal to 2. Remember to isolate variables here. All right. So I'm going to subtract the radical x minus 2. You could have subtracted the other radical 2, but I'm just going to focus on the second one here. By doing that, it's radical 2x plus 3 is equal to 2 minus radical x minus 2. Now that you have an isolated radical, you're going to square both sides here. And remember you have to use FOILing when you have a subtraction sign here. So this is what? 2x plus 3, you get rid of the radical, that's why we squared it, equals, and then we're going to FOIL this. And when we FOIL this, make sure you guys follow each step. 2 times 2 is 4. 2 times negative radical 2, it'd be 2 radical x minus 2 minus 2 radical x minus 2 plus, and then this times this is x radical x minus 2 squared, which gets rid of the radical, so it'll just be x minus 2. Okay. Then combine like terms, so it'll be 2x plus 3 is equal to 4 minus 2 is 2. All right. And then this minus this be minus 4 radical x minus 2. Minus 2 minus 2 is 4 minus 4 plus x. And then move the 2 to the 3, and then move the x to the 2x. So it'll be x plus 1 is equal to negative 4 radical x minus 2. All right. And then, sorry, I'm going fast. I'm just going to try to get through this and we'll answer questions. Okay, so you square both sides again. You can divide the 4 if you want, but there's no reason to right now because you can just square both sides. Because 4 and radical x minus 2 are multiplying, you don't have to do like a FOIL or anything like that. Okay, so this becomes, if you FOIL this out, x squared plus 2x plus 1 is equal to 16, and then parentheses x minus 2. All right. And then you have to distribute. So there's little tricky parts to this where you have to distribute here. So it'll be x squared plus 2x plus 1 is equal to 16x minus 32. Then you see that there's a quadratic, so put it in standard form. Okay, so to solve this, you'd be 16, subtract the 16x, add the 32. So just get used to this part. Recognize that there's a square. So if there's a square, make it a quadratic. Okay, so it's what? X squared minus 14x plus 33 is equal to 0. Okay. All right, so x method this out here. This will be 33 and this will be negative 14. Two numbers that multiply to the 33 and add up to the 14. Negative 14 is negative 11 and negative 3. So this all comes home right here. It'll be x minus 11 and x minus 3. You make them both equal to 0, right, to solve. So x is equal to 11 or x is equal to 3. Okay. All right. Last but not least, it is the the absolute value of x squared minus 3 is equal to 2x. All right. Remember that you form two equations. X squared minus 3 is equal to 2x, and x squared minus 3 is equal to negative 2x. Subtract the 2x to the other side here, so it'll be x squared minus 2x minus 3 is equal to 0. Add the 2x to be x squared plus 2x minus 3 is equal to 0. If you understand forming quadratic equations in standard form and then solving it from there, that is so much of the battle here. That's what we're trying to get to. Every, like, whether you go absolute value, whether you go, whether you go radicals, whether you go, substitution, grouping, at the end of the day, it's going to use one of the factoring or quadratic equation methods here. All right. So that's the whole thing here. So you factor this out, be negative 3 and negative 2, be negative 3 and 1. So x minus 3, x plus 1. And then on this one, it's negative 3 and positive 2. So it'll be 3 and negative 1. So it'll be x plus 3, this one switch, and then x minus 1. So when you make them all equal to 0, x minus 3 is equal to 0, x plus 1 is equal to 0, x plus 3 is equal to 0, x plus 1 is equal to 0. The four solutions are 3, negative 1, negative 3, and negative 1. All right. And that should do it for today. All right.